Okay, let's bring in a guest. Kakhaber Kemoklidze is the former head of Georgia's National Security Council. Joins me live on the line from Abu Dhabi, and it's a real pleasure to have you on the line. Thank you, sir. I hope you forgive me. This is a very direct question, but I am fascinated to hear your response. Donald Trump is asking Ukraine for its valuable minerals. He says he's a businessman. He seems to be talking a lot about money at times of conflict. He doesn't seem to be offering anything in return, certainly not the security guarantees that Volodymyr Zelensky's been asking for. So my question is, how is that any different to a war profiteer? Somebody who comes into a situation of conflict, exploits the uncertainty for personal gain, in this case, for the US?
Well, that's a very interesting question, actually, and I guess this question is asked from many actors, and especially within Ukraine. To be honest, still, American political agenda was very well known, and especially Republican and President Trump's political agenda in advance. So I guess Ukrainians, as well as the remaining world, would be more prepared, had to be more prepared for such scenario. They have their internal, let's say, political goals, and I think this particular, let's say, geopolitical standing is exactly what would be expected, to be honest.
It would make sense to me if Donald Trump came in and said, we are going to offer you security, we need your minerals. Fair enough, that would be a business transaction. He's not offering what Zelensky wants. So what is the motivation for Zelensky, who seemingly still is interested in the deal? Why would he accept it? What does he get out of it?
Well, I think the American approach with regard to the minerals deal was a bit of like face saving, in my view, in my personal analysis, for the local audience to provide further assistance to Ukraine. And at some point from the Ukrainian standing, I guess that is sort of the key bridge which should be rebuilt with the new administration in Washington. We often say that you can't turn no into yes without maybe. Minerals deal, in my view, is exact that maybe, to be honest, which is vital for Ukraine right now than for the United States. However, from the pragmatic standpoint, Neil, having American economic presence within Ukraine, it's also a beneficial, and especially in a medium and long term for Ukraine. Of course, it does not mean the security guarantees because we're dealing with Russians. And I'm sure everyone knows that they won't care much about, let's say, US-Ukraine mineral deal when it is about their geostrategic interests in Ukraine and in Eastern Europe, but it is still something. So I guess this is exactly the small bridge which should be rebuilt between Kiev and Washington.
The EU leaders, I mean, they say all the right things, and they clearly have the intention. They want to help Ukraine, partly to help them and partly to help themselves in the long term. But what if they can't come together and provide tangible help in the short term? Do you think that Ukraine can continue to fight on its own?
Well, to be honest, I think Ukraine is much better prepared for the ongoing war than they were like 3 years ago, even 2 years ago. Why? Because the military industrial capabilities are in much better shape than it were like a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I think they can still, let's say, sustain the battlefield. So I don't expect that the battlefield is going to collapse within the next, let's say, 6/8 months at least. But I also believe that when there is a will, there is always a way out. So when there's going to be a pragmatic will from the European, let's say, partners to develop their own military capabilities outside of Ukraine and within Ukraine, it will be a huge assistance for Kiev, exactly for keeping the battlefield going in their interest.
Thank you for your time, Kakhaber. Kakhaber Kemoklidze is my guest, the former head of Georgia's National Security Council. Appreciate your time.